All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our conference. I'm very excited. It's the first one I'm doing. We have some great things on the agenda to talk about today. Kelly and Andy will also be doing some presenting. I just want to put a few reminders out there. Please make sure that your microphone is muted so that we don't get that uncomfortable feedback. And also, if your speakers are too loud, that can also cause some issues there. So, and then if you have any questions, please IM me as we're going, and I will try to get those answered. Other than that, thanks for joining and enjoy. We'll get started today with the customer service training. You have that accessed and ready to go. I'm going to screen share mine here. Let's see. And we'll get started. All right. So we're going to talk about customer service and how it truly is just an act of caring. We want to make sure that we are caring for our clients and taking care of their needs here. So quite a few years ago, when I was working in early childhood development, we had a meeting, and one of the things they did was share this starfish thrower story with us, and it just really stuck with me all these years. So I just wanted to share it with you guys. One day, a man was walking along the beach when he noticed a boy picking something up and gently throwing it into the ocean. Approaching the boy, he said, "What are you doing?" The youth replied, "Throwing starfish back into the ocean. The surf is up, the tide is going out. If I don't throw them back, they'll die." Don't you realize there are miles and miles of beach and hundreds of starfish? You can't possibly make a difference. After listening politely, the boy bent down, picked up another starfish, and threw it back into the surf. And smiling at the man, he said, "I made a difference for that one." That story just always stuck with me. There are miles and miles of starfish, and so many of our customers really do. They're just looking for someone to help make a difference in their lives. It's important to remember that every interaction matters when we are dealing with others. Single one. You know, most of us can be pleasant and helpful when the circumstances are ready for that. We've had our coffee, computer's up and running, there's no glitches, so we know this is a dream. The client is expected and on time, the situation's perfectly aligned. For a very courteous smile, "Welcome to the Department of Family Services, how can I help you?" To the door on Friday at 4:50 p.m. They insist on speaking to you personally. You're right in the middle of finishing up what you had hoped would be the last case of the day. And how do you handle that? Well, the truth is that matters just as much, if not more, than the previously described situation. A welcoming smile, positive demeanor, and willingness to help, even when it's inconvenient, will leave your customer feeling as if they've truly been cared for. That positive interaction will lay the groundwork for an excellent professional relationship that both you and the customer will continue to benefit from. So how do we show that we care? Well, first, you started off with a smile. It can be heard, felt, reciprocated. It's easy, it doesn't cost you anything, and it will immediately set the tone for a positive interaction. Make sure that we are listening, actively listening. Active listening is key to good customer service. It lets the customer know that they are important to you. It allows them to express their needs and concerns, to feel like they've been heard. They want to know that they are more than a number or a case file. So listening to them lets them know that they really do matter. To identify their need. All customers' needs are unique to their situation. Properly identifying their specific need is essential to customer service and customer satisfaction. Often customers are not clear about what it is that they're asking for, and you will have to listen for those clues and ask questions for clarification. We want to empathize with them. Let them know that while you may not be in their position, you do understand their needs and feelings. That is so important to building good relations. And apologize. A sincere apology can go a long way toward good customer relations by diffusing anger and frustration. And the truth is, we all make mistakes. The most important thing in those situations is how we respond when we mess up, and even when the situation's out of our control. Say a customer walks through the office and there are 3 other people waiting to be helped before them. They might be in a hurry and feel frustrated that they've had to wait longer than they wanted to. It's not necessarily a situation where you've done anything wrong, but a simple, "I'm sorry for your wait, how can I help you?" off on the right foot. We want to make sure that we are resolving their concern. We want to do that quickly. Time is of the essence when customer service issues arise. So be sure to use the situation as an opportunity to make changes that will prevent similar situations from occurring in the future. You know, we talk, smiling is so important. I mean, I will repeat that a few times throughout this. A smile is the shortest distance between 2 people. According to Psychology Today, current research shows us that a smile is contagious, which I think we all know. It can make us appear more attractive to others. It lifts our mood as well as the moods of those around us, and it can even lengthen our lives. And another study reported that seeing an attractive smiling face actually activates the region in your brain that processes sensory rewards. So that suggests that when you view a person smiling, you actually feel rewarded, and that's what we want to do. And that can also be heard over the phone. So make sure that we are smiling and happy to talk to people when we're answering phone calls or having phone interviews. So we talked a little bit about being an active listener. What does that mean? First of all, we need to focus on the customer. Give the customer 100% of your attention. Pay special attention to details such as tone, word usage, voice volume, and body language. Listen for key information. Your customer may not be clear about their needs. They may have forgotten the name of the specific form that they're required to complete. Listening carefully for key information will help you to identify what those needs are. Listen for key feelings. They are just as important as the facts. Determining the customer's feelings is an excellent way to provide personalized service that your customer will appreciate. And make sure that we are clarifying our understanding. Ask questions. Paraphrase their concerns to be sure that you have identified the correct need. It might sound they might say, "I'm supposed to turn in proof of my pay and I can't find it. Isn't there some paper that my boss can sign?" You want to paraphrase that. So you cannot find your most current pay stub and would like an employer statement for your employer to fill out. Is that correct? That lets them know that you're listening. It clears up any confusion about what it is that they're needing, and then their needs can be met. These are just some quotes that I found about listening and how important it is that I really enjoyed and wanted to share. The most basic of all human needs is the need to understand and be understood. Isn't that what we all want? The best way to understand people is to listen to them. Sincere forms of respect is actually listening to what another has to say. And listening is an art that requires attention over talent, spirit over ego, and others over self. I love that. It doesn't take any special skill to listen to someone and to let them know that they're important to you. And then this one, if you have children or have raised teenagers, you will understand completely. Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Make sure we are not doing that. It can be very frustrating to the person who is speaking. So what is the heart of the matter with customer service? Now, you've listened, you've identified their needs, now what? Well, we want to empathize with their situation. I understand. That just lets them know that you really, we want to apologize for how the situation has affected them. That this situation has been so stressful for you. And we want to resolve the situation. Do everything I can to help. Now they're confident in knowing that we're making progress towards what it is that they are asking of you. So Striving for excellence at DFS, how do we put this into our everyday practice here at the Department of Family Services? Return phone calls and emails within 24 hours and preferably the same business day. If you plan to be out of the office for an extended period of time, please utilize the vacation responder on your email and voicemail. That lets the clients and your coworkers know that who they can contact while you are out and when you will return. Let's see. Inform the customer of what to expect. Knowing what will be expected, such as the required paperwork, what the processing timeframes are, benefit certification periods, those things will all help to prevent common miscommunication issues. And please make sure that you do not make promises that you will be unable to keep. And do your best to process applications and changes quickly and accurately. While the guidelines state that applications can take up to 30 days for processing, it is best practice to complete them as soon as possible when all verifications have been submitted. Moving on, give the benefit of the doubt. We all have bad days, right? Some people take their frustrations out on others. Make sure that you are keeping calm and just remember that it isn't about you. A customer who behaves badly within reason can usually be turned around by using your good customer service skills. And people tend to mirror each other's behaviors. So be sure to keep your attitude positive and your demeanor kind, and they will usually reciprocate that. Something else that we can do is make sure that you are knowledgeable in other available services within your community. We want to be able to refer other areas that we don't necessarily help with. Some examples of that might be Climb Wyoming, your local senior center, the local food bank, public health office. Here in Fremont County, we have the First Stop Help Center, which is, they sometimes have funding to help people get their power turned back on, maybe pay for their deposit on a rental, things like that. So you just want to be able to make sure that begin and end with our door. You want to be able to refer them elsewhere within the community. And just remember that mistakes are simply opportunities for improvement. Use your experience with difficult situations to improve your case management process and prevent similar situations from occurring in the future. Always keep a growth mindset. Something that I do for stress management is I run, and I'm not good at it, but I do try. When I am running, I have a personal mantra, and I just repeat it to myself over and over again. Never ends. So if I'm reaching for a new milestone, a new mile pace, I just keep chanting that to myself. Growth begins where comfort ends, and it gets me through that tough period because I know I'm doing something for myself that I am striving for. And it is important to take care of yourself. Find something that you can do to help relieve stress. If it's, meditation, if it's coloring, have something where you can take a few minutes when you're feeling overwhelmed and just decompress. Because if you take care of yourself, you're in a better position to take care of others. And success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. Winston Churchill. I love that. And then this is something that I found that I really want to hang up in our kitchen. In this office, we do teamwork. We do help. We do respect. Punctuality and laughter. We do friendship. We do coffee and cake. We communicate and listen. We do motivation. We do great things. We really do great things here at Department of Family Services. And it's important to remember that customer service is not a department within our agency. It's not the responsibility of one person. It is the job of every person. It's not an action. It is at the core of every action. Customers are not just our clients. They are also coworkers and professionals from other agencies. So we need to work together well and utilize each other's positive strengths. And finally, just a few cute little quotes and a picture about starting fresh every day. Don't we all just need that start once in a while? Every day is a new beginning. Take a deep breath and just start again. Between a good day and a bad day is your attitude. It's not what happens to us, it's how we respond to that. Today so good that yesterday gets jealous. Are you a thrower of starfish? Remember, every single day, it really does matter to that one person. All right. So if you have any questions about any of that, make sure that you just IM me or email me. I'm sure there probably won't be on the customer service. Up next, we have Kelly Merritt, and he's going to do our annual civil rights training.
All right, so I'll go ahead and get started, but before I do that, I just want to mention a couple of things. So as we kind of got started, I think that we had a few people in one room and a few people in another room. So I'm going to just address that really quick. I apologize for any confusion that went out. But I do know that there was an email sent out yesterday, and Val was nice enough to send that out, that had instructions along with our agenda on how to access the training. Just so you know, I can give you just a little bit of background. One of the reasons we used to have the link, and it's been more than a year ago that we've been able to click on that link off of our calendar, or at least close to that, I guess. The reason that we can't do that anymore is just a behind-the-scenes tech issue. They actually took away some of that functionality through Google that we had. And so we had been able to place that on your calendars. Now the one on your calendar is just simply to block off your time. You should, right now, the way the system is set up, you should receive an email just like you did yesterday that will contain instructions and a link on how to access the training. Also, as you access this training, it will always be available on the same YouTube channel. So once it's placed and once it's recorded, it will be up there and available. But also, if you want to subscribe to that channel, or you want to look at that and save a link, it should always be in a very similar spot. So each video will have a different link. So each time we do one of these video conferences, will be accessed a little bit differently. So again, I apologize for any confusion that went out. I resent the email with the link and some of the instructions again this morning as we were going through that. If you're late to the party, so to speak, don't worry, you can always rewind this back to the beginning and watch it from the beginning. That's one of the nice things about being able to record that. The reason we can't set up a link is because Google actually limits the number of people that can be on that call. And so if we just had a link, we would be full in the first few minutes because it only allows, I think, 25 people. So there are more of us than that. So I apologize again for any confusion, but I see that people are starting to get on. If you know of anybody in your office that's struggling to get on or is in the wrong spot, please just let them know that there's been 2 emails now sent out with those instructions, and they should be able to catch one of those links. So if you have any trouble with that, and supervisors, if you have anybody that has trouble accessing that, just please have your staff go back and watch again. It's going to be the same content, just recorded. All right. So that being said, I am going to go over a little bit of civil rights training with you guys today. And again, this is something that we do annually, so this is not going to be anything new, exciting, or earth-shattering, but it is important that we kind of understand the concepts that I'll cover again today. The training that I'll go through is actually provided to us by FNS, so there are some things that I may move through rather quickly, but there's some really important parts that I want to touch on as we go through. All right, so as we go through this training today, there's a few things that I really want to focus on, and I want to make sure that you guys pick up. So first is that all staff should receive training on all aspects of civil rights compliance. That's one of the things we're doing right now. So this is an important aspect of everyone's job. So this is an annual training that we will try to make sure that we do, whether it's this video conference or some other method. You will receive civil rights training each year. So again, kind of a note, especially to supervisors, if you have somebody that's out of the office today, it's always important that they go back and watch video conferences. This is a required training, but this civil rights training, please let us know if you have somebody that hasn't been able to view this. we want to make sure everybody gets the opportunity. So if somebody has trouble accessing the YouTube link, something like that, please, and you can just let me know on that and I will follow up. Okay. The next point on here is staff should be able to identify a civil rights complaint if it's received. We'll go over some of the indicators on what it constitutes a civil rights complaint. And then probably the most important thing, they need to know what to do if they do receive a complaint. Okay. And the final thing is more of a kind of a side note, which is to understand that it's the basic right of the individual to file a complaint. And I think that's worded pretty well. I know that none of us like to receive complaints. But especially when it comes to civil rights, things like that, it is a person's right to basically file a complaint or make a complaint. We just need to do our job correctly to ensure that we're, protecting people's civil rights, one, and also know the correct follow-up if we ever do get a complaint. All right, so civil rights. What are civil rights? A good definition for civil rights would be fair and equitable treatment in the workplace and with the delivery of our programs. So as we talk about that, really it boils down to not discriminating against any group of people. So we can discriminate either intentionally by neglect or by actions or lack of actions. So discrimination doesn't necessarily have to be us going out of our way to make something difficult for a particular group of people. It can also be if we're neglecting a group of people or doing something differently. So we as an agency want to strive to not discriminate because of race, color, national origin, age, sex, disability, religion, political beliefs, or sexual orientation. All those are protected categories. And we certainly want to make sure that anybody that comes into our office and applies for benefits is going to receive the same treatment. Okay? And that's a fair and equitable treatment that we give them. And it goes right along with some of the things that Val just explained when we talk about good customer service. Okay? In order to ensure this is done, and I'm not going to cover each one of these little blurbs here on the PowerPoint, but it's in order to ensure this is done, it's important to understand that we also collect data on a lot of those categories. So data by race or ethnic category is recorded. As you know, as we go through our EPIC sub-screens, one of the screens, that HERC screen, we actually fill out information on person's race or ethnicity. Okay, those things are gathered and actually reported federally in order to make sure that there's equal distribution among the programs to see if there's any anomalies, things like that. So it is important that we kind of follow those guidelines. Okay, the one thing I will point out on this is the last bullet point on this screen does tell us that self-identification or self-reporting is the preferred method of obtaining data, which means if you have somebody come into your office and apply for benefits, we certainly prefer that they tell you what race or ethnicity they fit into, rather than us having to identify that. However, we can identify if they haven't put it on a form, for example, or something like that, and we can clearly identify their race or ethnicity. We do have to fill in that section, and so we can use a visual on that as well. Okay, so as you go through that, these are the things that we identify. You know this as you go through. Again, that HERC screen is where we are tracking that information in our SNAP and Power cases, divided up into ethnicity and race. The ethnicity is the Hispanic or Latino or non-Hispanic or Latino, and then the various races that we can enter into that category as well. So it's a 2-question format. And this is pretty standard. That's what's reported back to the feds when they kind of do some of this tracking as well. Okay. So with that information, what we do is this is basically to determine how effectively the programs are reaching potentially eligible people in our areas. Okay. If there are disparities or area where there's underrepresentation, there may be cause for an investigation. This is not something that I feel like has been a huge stress for us here in Wyoming, but it is important to kind of know that process of how that might happen. Okay. As kind of monitoring this, state agencies establish the system, and then that's reported back to FNS or or to the feds so that they can have that information as well. Okay. We as benefit specialists are required to collect the data at the point of application. So going back to what I said before, since this is a required collection, if an applicant does not consent to the self-identification method, which means they do not want to identify their race or their ethnicity, caseworker through visual observation can determine the client or the applicant's race or ethnic origin and mark the appropriate category. So if somebody ever were to come into your office and refuse to attest to their race or ethnicity, you could make a visual determination on that. Okay, and that's an approved method that we've been given. Okay, I'm going to kind of skip over a little bit of this, but just know that a lot of this information is also follows the same format of records retention that we use now, which means we have to record those records for at least 3 years. Given that we primarily use Epics for this data recording, that certainly isn't an issue. That information is stored there and is available. Okay. The next thing I'll talk just a little bit about is bilingual requirements and program access. The definition of this is that individuals who do not speak English as their primary language and have a limited ability to read, speak, write, or understand English fall into this category. And they should have the same access to programs that any other person would have. So there's a couple of things that you guys know that we do in order to fill this requirement. The first thing is that we have, and I'm going to kind of skip through this a little bit. The first thing is that we have a couple of versions of the application. We do have the application in English as well as Spanish. That's one way that we do that. There are some other forms that we have. With that, there's been a few questions that have come up. So for example, I did have a situation where there was a Spanish-speaking client that needed an additional form. A worker that was able to translate that did that for that person, but it's important to note if we do that, they still need the original version of the form, even though that's in English. And I know that it isn't exactly the easiest, but we want to make sure they have the same access. So if you have somebody that does not speak English as their primary language, we need to do as much as possible. And I'm going to kind of skip through a couple of these as we go. We need to do as much as possible to ensure that they have the same program access as the next person. Okay, so if you do have somebody that struggles and maybe English isn't their primary language and Spanish is not available, please remember that we have the language line available. If you have somebody that doesn't have a translator or somebody that helps them with the application, they could certainly come into your office. They could sit down. You could get somebody on the language line and you could read the questions off the application and fill that out for them as you go in order to make sure that they have the same access. Okay, so again, if you haven't used the language line, it's here, the number that you call along with the kind of the 6-digit ID that we have to enter in as a state. Okay, a little asterisk down below. And this is kind of an addition, but if you have a child of an applicant, we really discourage them from being the translator in a case. So that's why the language line is there available. And I know this will happen. You may have somebody come in, they bring their kids in that are fluent English speakers and they are not. Just have the language line there available as well. Okay, we're going to keep cruising right along. And again, I'm not going to touch on every point. It isn't important for us to also give equal opportunity for religious organizations. And I'm going to try to sum this up pretty succinctly. Okay, and some of it I'm going to go back to some of the other programs that we think of. For example, there's the TFAP program, which is the Emergency Food Assistance Program. That's another program that we help administer through our division. And many times our distribution sites are based out of church sites. Okay, so whether it's the small Baptist church or the small Catholic church or wherever it may be, some of these are based out of that. And it's important to know that if they are utilizing their facility for those commodities or that food, that they have to follow some pretty strict guidelines as far as distribution. And those guidelines are all based on eligibility, which in the case of TFAP is actually eligibility is based on income. So in those cases, it's important that we know that it's absolutely okay for us as benefit specialists to refer somebody to the local parish or the local church where they distribute USDA goods in order for them to supplement their food or whatever may be going on in that case. It's absolutely okay as well if you know of other resources in your area that may be affiliated with a religious organization. It is okay for us to refer them to those organizations in order to receive additional assistance. Okay, where the line is drawn when we talk about kind of that religious organization is that we can't say, for example, if you were to become a member of a specific group or a specific religious organization, just do that and then you can receive these extra services or goods. That's where we want to kind of draw the line, but we certainly don't discriminate. So the nice thing is opening that up has allowed us to have more distribution sites for food and kind of some other resources out there available as well. Okay, I'm going to kind of keep skipping through disability discrimination. And again, there's a whole bunch of laws that go along with that. If you're interested in the part of the CFRs or the codes that deal with these, those are listed in here as well. And I know you received a copy of it. But when it comes to disabilities, I think it's very simple. We want to make sure that people with disabilities have the same access to our programs as anybody else. So that may involve a little bit of work in your cases. I know most of our offices have ramps, things like that, where a person with disabilities will be able to access, but you may have a small office. For example, you may have a place where it might be difficult for somebody with a wheelchair to come into your office. If that's the case, we want to make sure that we make something available to that client if they're coming in for an in-person interview. For example, we may reserve a conference room or switch another worker with a larger office, or find a way that it's not difficult for that client to come in. You may have other disabilities that you have to deal with. One of the biggest positives for us is being able to conduct phone interviews in most of those cases. And so that certainly helps make sure that people with disabilities have the same program access as people without. Okay. Again, I'm going to kind of skip through some of this stuff. We'll talk about how we inform clients of their civil rights. We are going to inform them over and over again about their civil rights. At the time of their application, they're going to receive the rights and responsibilities that are contained in that application. So we should be handing those back to the client when they turn in their application as well. I know that sometimes gets missed, but we should be tearing out those pages that have the rights and responsibilities of the client. We should also be making sure that we inform the clients of their civil rights along with their rights and responsibilities at the time of interview. And please remember that this needs to be done at the beginning of the interview, not at the end of the interview. So I know a lot of people like to go over rights and responsibilities at the beginning, and at the end they kind of do a recap, especially with some of the reporting guidelines, things like that. That's absolutely okay. But rights and responsibilities, including civil rights explanations, need to be done kind of at the beginning. And a lot of you guys have good scripts or have done that long enough that you know what needs to be said. If you are uncertain of what you should be informing your client of, please email either Val or myself or Jackie. Any of us can get you a copy of the script that we've been using in one of the offices. Okay. All of our SNAP notices that we send out also include information on the client's civil rights. And in each office, there should be a poster. It's the End Justice for All poster. I think this is a little bit of an older version. Most of you have a little newer version, but this should be posted up in your office somewhere. So tomorrow when you come into work, glance around the front, see if you can spot this End Justice for All poster. If not, let the office manager, let your supervisor know so we can make sure to get one up. I think most of the supervisors got one the last time we were together in a conference. We sent those back out with people to put up in offices. All right, so a couple more things, and again, I'm going to kind of breeze through this. The public notification, I'm not going to talk too much, and the non-discrimination statement that we have in there, I'm going to kind of skip through that. So let's talk about what happens if you have a complaint. So first, in order for somebody to file a complaint of discrimination, in order for us to process the complaint needs to happen within 180 days from the act of discrimination or potential discrimination. Okay, they can file that complaint either written, verbal, or anonymously. So in that case, if you were to receive a phone call where somebody wanted to make a complaint about a civil rights violation that they felt occurred in your office, you would just need to track that. Okay. Now the easiest thing for us is any complaint that you have should be reported to your supervisor. Okay. Civil rights complaints are one of those things that certainly needs to report it immediately so that we can follow some certain guidelines. Because anytime we have received a civil rights complaint that's actually tracked, we have to send that off to FNS, and they have to make sure that we've followed up with that complaint within 90 days. So we have a state plan in place, but for you guys, I mean, the easy thing to do is if you have a complaint, especially civil rights oriented, those need to be reported to your supervisor. Now I know that there can be some gray area when it comes to complaints, which means you may have somebody call and say, well, I'm just upset that I didn't get my benefits when I expected to receive those. We certainly want to deal with those from a customer service perspective really well, but there's a lot of these that we can resolve with the client right away. However, if there is a complaint of discrimination, we need to make sure those are reported so that we can follow up. Okay, if this happens, again, notify your supervisor immediately, and then the process is going to work that information is passed along to the state office, and the state ombudsman is going to work directly with the person if we have that person's name, and whoever that complaint, whether it's an office or individual, the ombudsman is going to work to try to make sure that complaint is either resolved or we figure out the root cause of what went on. Okay, and then that information is sent on to the feds. They can do an investigation if they need to, but just know that the ombudsman is going to work directly with you if the complaint was made, just to make sure that there was an actual civil rights issue that went on with this complaint. And I think if we are doing our jobs correctly, there should not be. So, but this is so you understand the process. Okay. You can read through this process. Again, I've sent this out to you. If you have something like this, I would encourage you to speak about it with your supervisors, and make sure that we kind of go through the process correctly. But there's kind of a process that FNS goes through as well. Okay. If they find we're in non-compliance, they're going to do a follow-up. Okay. And it's pretty much that simple. The things that they're going to look at for compliance areas as far as the feds are, and I'm going to kind of skip down just a little bit. If they were to basically either do a compliance or review, they're going to make sure that eligible persons in the household have an equal opportunity to participate. And this is something that I think that Andy is going to address a little bit today as well. But it's also important to note that as we look at an application, that we need to evaluate each person on that application for eligibility and not make a determination based on the head of household. So this certainly happens, especially when we have citizen or non-citizen issues. It's important that we look at each person in that household to determine eligibility. Okay. They're also looking at case records, making sure we're following that up. They're looking to see if the On Justice for All posters are placed up in our offices. If we're using the correct non-discrimination statement, which isn't up to the majority of you, we're going to be, updating that as needed in the applications, things like that. And then availability of program information to eligible persons, program applicants, and participants. Racial and ethnic data collection and maintenance for 3 years, complaint processing, and training. So again, the training part, we're fulfilling that requirement right now to make sure that we have annual training on civil rights. Okay, the rest of this actually goes through a lot of background on civil rights. So the bottom line, I believe, is what I kind of put: if you have need more information on these, contact your supervisor or contact Jackie or myself. We can help you through if you do have a complaint or if you have a concern. But the bottom line is we want to make sure that we treat everybody fairly, we treat everybody with good customer service, and we make sure that anybody that needs to has access to our programs. Okay, so that's all I have for you guys today. I appreciate the time that we've spent, and I will turn the time back over to Val. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. I have never actually used the language line, but just so that everyone knows, I have been told that it is very user-friendly, very helpful, and so there's nothing to be concerned about should you have to do that. Next, we have Andy Barker, and she's going to be talking about sanctioning ineligible individuals. So I will turn it over to you.
And good morning, everyone. I'm just going to go over a couple quick examples for you. We've been kind of seeing a trend on denying cases when we shouldn't be, as far as like work registration for households of greater than one. And so as Kelly said, this can actually happen as well when we're looking at citizenship. So the first example, just really quick, and to let you guys know, I'm going to also add these into the policy manual. And I think, you know, there's a section on sanctions, but I think I'm actually going to put it in the work registration just because it fits a little better there. So we've seen a couple of cases come through where we've required work registration, you know, either for the PI or some adult in the household. And we've been denying those cases when we don't receive the 301 back. And we should not be doing that if the household has other members in it. So what you need to be doing instead is sanctioning them. So you're going to code them DF, and you're going to process benefits for the remainder of the household as long as you have all those other items that you need. So the same is going to work for citizenship. If we have an adult in the household who claims that they are not a citizen, or claims that they are, but they didn't give us that verification, we're not going to deny that whole household. We're just going to sanction that one individual and code them as a DI. So the only time that we can deny for those things, only have the household of one. So I'll put the examples in there. If you guys have other suggestions on where this would be good for you, if it's not the work registration and policy, where it's going to give you a good reminder, because like I said, we've seen, I think, at least 3 cases come through pretty recently where we're denying when we shouldn't be denying. So for now, I'll put it in the work registration, but if you guys have a better place where you think it will remind you when you're actually doing your casework, let me know and we will work that out. If you have any questions on that, you can chat Val right now and she will let me know. But that's all I really have, just a really quick kind of.
All right, thank you. So we're going to do some confidentiality training just as part of our beginning of the year trainings, things that we do have to touch base on annually. So I am going to screen share again. Hopefully we get it all up and running. There we go. All right. So confidentiality is one of the things, of course, since we are Department of Family Services and we are privy to private information for individuals, we need to make sure that we are protecting them by keeping their information confidential. Let's see. So we want to make sure that we are safeguarding our clients' confidentiality. As I said, we are the gatekeepers for very sensitive information that they do have to provide to us in order to determine their eligibility. And it should not be taken lightly. This is a very serious situation, and we want to make sure that we are treating our clients' information as carefully as we would want someone to treat ours. Confidentiality means that all information about our clients, their applications, case status, and provided verifications is not to be discussed or released to anyone without authorization. do not share that information. Any information about a client or the status of their case should be kept strictly confidential. That includes verifications from their case files, things that they have submitted, information from their interviews, the narratives, any emails from them, social services or other state agencies, and any third-party sources. Do not share any information regarding a client or a case, even if the person requesting it is a non-custodial parent of a child in the case or a client's relative. And I just want to touch base on that. We've had some questions from the field recently regarding our release of confidential information that we go over with the rights and responsibilities at each interview. Under the release of confidential information section, number 3 does state, eligibility information relating to a child may be released to the non-custodial parent, and that if our client has a court order or restraining order which prohibits the release of this information, include a copy of the order with your application. So the language in that can be a little gray, and basically what it's actually saying is eligibility information, meaning is that child on benefits or are they not on benefits? That right there is kind of the extent of that. We want to make sure that the person requesting that information, we are able to identify them. So that is an important piece. And then, you know, if we are able to identify, yes, you are who you say you are the mother or father of this child, yes, we can tell you whether or not they are receiving benefits. We still do not want to share any actual sensitive private information. We do not want to give away social security numbers, verification out of the file, such as the birth certificates, things of that nature, their address. Those are not what this is talking about. It's strictly, are they on benefits or are they not? So hopefully that clears up some of those questions. And then we also want to make sure that we do not share our clients' names, information, or anything else regarding them with our family members or friends. So you had a hard day at work, you want to go home and talk to your spouse about your hard day. We want to make sure that we are very careful about not sharing any identity information for the clients. Our office practices are important. Make sure that any case files are kept in a lockable drawer or file cabinet. Keep your office free of any paperwork or files that may contain client information, and make sure that information verifications from clients are placed in a secure location once we have received them. This is a great example of what we don't want our offices to look like. So let's make sure we are keeping everything nice and tidy and out of sight. Phone interviews. When we are conducting our phone interviews, we need to make sure that we are protecting the client's information. When calling a client to conduct an interview, or if they call us to inquire about their case, make sure that we are talking to who they say they are. We can simply just ask, what are the last 4 digits of your social security number? And can you verify your birth date? We can ask them to verify their address too, although that's a little more public. So it's just a few seconds to make sure that we are protecting them. Make sure that your conversation cannot be overheard by other people in your building. If you are using speakerphone, make sure that your door is shut. If a client is in your office, if you have a door, I know some offices do not, we want to make sure that we have that door closed so that people walking up and down the hallway cannot hear everything that we are talking about. Computer privacy. Make sure to always lock your computer. You can use the Winky lock button. Don't count on the screensaver to time out as you leave your office. Make sure that we are taking control of that. If you have a client interview or a client enters your office, make sure that your screen is locked, that you don't have another case's information up on your narratives or, you know, epics up and running. Also, make sure to position your screens in a way to protect confidentiality. If someone is walking down the hallway, they shouldn't be able to see what you are working on your computer. I recently had to readjust my office to make sure that I was complying with that need as well. So that is very important. And never, ever share your passwords. Keep your passwords in a place where they can't be found too if you have to write them down, because I know we have a lot of passwords that change very often. And so if you have to have a sheet of paper where you write your passwords down, keep it in a locked drawer somewhere that can't be easily accessed by somebody else. Violations for not complying with all of these rules would be suspension, termination, possible lawsuits, fines, and even imprisonment. So protect yourself as well as others. So when can information be shared? Information may be released on a need-to-know basis to Department of Workforce Services, as we refer individuals for power, things like that, to tribal TANF employees, Social Security Administration, workers' compensation, child support enforcement, other states' DFS offices. That would be, they're calling to verify that our clients' benefits have closed here because they're applying in another state. We can go ahead and verify that. The Department of Education for purposes like the free and reduced lunch program. So not the individual schools or districts. You want to deal with the person in charge of managing the free and reduced lunch programs. What if a client asks for information from his or her file? A lot. People lose their birth certificates or their social security cards. They need to go get a new driver's license, and so they need that information. What can we give them? So the client or the authorized representative, and it must be the client or authorized representative, may examine, review, or copy information from their file, except for information about or provided by other parties who have disclosed information. So if we have had to reach out and get collateral contact or other information from employers and things of that nature, they're not allowed to have those. They have not submitted those to us. Reports, correspondence, or case entries. And then also information on status of prosecution or fraud investigations. So a really easy way to look at that is if they have provided it to us, we can allow them to have that, a copy of that. They've given us their birth certificates, their social security cards. It might be a utility bill. I lost my utility bill and I'm applying for LEAP. Can I have a copy of that to send with my LEAP application? Those kinds of things we can certainly give to them. UFO hits. That's information received from the IRS for client eligibility purposes only. That is the only way we are to be using that information. We cannot release that information to anyone, including the client. And we cannot print that. Do not have that in your case files. That is on the computer. You look at it, you get the information so that you know how to follow up on it. The end. So nothing further with the UFO hits. Court orders and subpoenas. If you receive a court order for the release of a client's information, please work with your supervisor or program manager in regards to that. File the court order in the case file and contact the Attorney General's office with any questions regarding how to handle that. If you receive a subpoena, hold all information confidential until you receive written direction from the Attorney General's office or a DFS regional manager. Follow all actions of the written direction and file the subpoena in the case file. Document the actions taken based on that. Document, document, document. If law enforcement should request information on a client who is fleeing to avoid prosecution, custody, or confinement for a felony, violating a condition of parole or probation, or has information necessary for the officer to conduct an official duty related to a felony or parole violation, if any of those situations occur, we can, upon written request, address, social security number, and a photo ID. Again, upon written request. And in cases of child abuse or endangerment, report any information on suspected physical or mental injury, sexual abuse, or negligent treatment of a minor to a social worker with Department of Family Services. If you have an applicant that is a close friend or family member, do not work the case yourself as soon as possible, and the case will be transferred to another worker. If someone in your office, such as a coworker, applies for benefits, please ensure that these cases are transferred to another office. And then the authorization to furnish information. The release on our application is only for the purpose of the worker to secure information in order to determine eligibility for our programs. The authorization may be used to obtain collateral contact, information from employers, banks, insurance companies, those types of things. Only things that we use to determine their eligibility for our programs. And then the DFS 567, that is the release of confidential information that is Power Program specific. It is used by the benefit specialist when releasing or requesting information from other agencies, similar to what we just talked about, for purposes of determining eligibility for Power. And the information must be needed to determine, to verify or maintain eligibility or employment. So security mentor training, and I sent this out on this week's Hit the Mark. These are mandatory trainings. We want to make sure that we are completing them by the due dates. I think I mentioned that the next one should be released March 24th. We have 30 days to complete those, so they will be due by April 23rd, I think, if I'm doing the math correctly in my head real quick. You should have already received information on this. At this point, the first 7 of those trainings are already due. So make sure that you are taking a few moments to get those done. And like I mentioned, they are engaging, they're quick. They do not take much time. I know we're all busy. I know, we're all wanting to get other things done and taken care of, but this does not take much of your time, and they really are useful. So make sure that you are getting those done. And then finally, the golden rule of privacy. Just protect the information that you have access to in the same way that you would want someone to protect your information. So, and there we have it. And I think Jackie wanted to talk a little bit about the conflict of interest there. So I will turn this over to her.
All right. Good morning, everyone. So we've had some incidences lately where we have had folks working cases that were probably not 100% appropriate to be worked. And a lot of times the feedback that I get from the workers is, yeah, I kind of questioned if I should work that case or not. So, I mean, the rule of thumb is if you have to ask yourself if you should be working a case, the answer is probably no. So in those incidences, go ahead and just contact your supervisor, or if they're not available, Kelly or I, and we'll go ahead and get those worked. So don't put yourself in a situation where someone can come back on you and say that you had a conflict of interest or that you were unable to, be impartial on a case or something like that. We have plenty of workers across the state that we can farm cases out to, and we're all a team, and we're more than happy to do that. So again, friends, family, people that work for you, people that you interact with and know very personal information on, just go ahead and separate yourself from that case, and we'll get someone else to work it. So if you guys can do that, it will make our lives all easier, and we appreciate it. So thank you. Thanks, Val.
All right. Thanks, Jackie. So we are flying through this today. We are almost done with this training. Woohoo! I know we love that. Get a little bit more time to work some things. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the new Rave functionality, and then also some of the Epics enhancement updates that we have. I know, so we've seen where the address screen is now part of the workflow, which is very helpful to make sure we are checking that before sending notices. That helps to avoid some errors in that situation. We have now where the social security number no longer has the breaks between them. So that makes it easier for us to copy and paste into our searches, our interface searches. Again, that reduces human error and helps to prevent errors because of that. Let's see, and then let's see. Oh, now for Power clients, if a client is coded SS as having to receive SSI on the SEPA screen, our DEMH screen will no longer allow us to put anything besides S in the shelter supplied field, which is fantastic. So we are seeing some updates and changes to the systems that we use to make things flow a little easier and to prevent situations such as possible errors from occurring. We do still have the Epics enhancement team going. So if you have suggestions for things that you would like to see changed on that, please get them to your supervisor or contact person for that. A lot of, there have been some that, because of the nature of Epics, we're unable to make that happen. But as you can see, we are making some things happen that for convenience sake, which is wonderful. So let's keep those coming in. So I have just a short training on the rave updates, and I will get that up and going here. All right. So the new search functionality is fantastic. You no longer have to plug the social security numbers in time and time and time again for each individual person in the household, which we know can be very time consuming when you have large households. So we want to, on the top of the screen, you just select that search to reveal the drop-down menu. On the drop-down menu, you'll then select the search all on top. And it is important to remember that EDRS does not interface through this version of Rave. We still need to access that through Rave RDP. You enter each assistance unit social security only once. So very exciting. I have loved that while working. So I did plug a number in here, and this particular individual has 3 LEAP records and 57 posse payments. So this is the screen that you'll see come up that shows you what all interfaces have hits on them for this person. So if they have the state supplement, that would show underneath the posse payment section. So you double click on the available records to choose which one you would like to view the details on. That will pull up the page that we've all seen before. Only this time that social security number is automatically input into the field. So no errors, no time consuming issues there. You click the search button again, and it pulls up the records for that. We chose LEAP, so this shows that our individual has LEAP records from 3 different seasons. You'll double click on the record that you want to see again. Details, and there we have it. So their most current LEAP application was approved for the 2016 to 17 season. We can see the action date of that approval, the amount paid, and the last payment date. That's important when we're looking at giving a possible standard utility deduction. We can do that for 12 months from the last payment date, and make sure that you print a copy for the case file. And it works the same way with all of the other interfaces that show up. So kind of that same workflow. And then I just wanted to touch on some of the Rave reports that are very helpful tools for caseload management. I know we have some new workers and things like that, and some changes here too that you just may not know about. So first off, from our quick report screen, we can choose our ABOD report, and that will show us the 3 free ABOD months, how many of those that they have used in the free month count section, and then also the extended month count if they have qualified for extended months, and how many of those they have used. So make sure that we are pulling that. That is a great tool to look at when you want to send the ABOD pen notices to find out if situations have changed for their household, to be able to see who all you have on your caseload who is an ABOD. Then under our Crystal reports, you'll just click the reports tab on top, and that pulls down the drop down menu for Crystal reports or a quick report. Really great reports in there, such as the app received over X days. Something that I'm not sure if everyone knows is in the days field, it does not have to be 20 days or 30 days. I know we talk about 20 days and 30 days a lot just because of those time frames within our requirements, but you can put 00 in there and pull up every application that is registered in your caseload right now. You could choose 5 days to see who has applied from the previous week and earlier. Whatever it is that you need, you can actually input that there, which is fantastic. And you can sort that report by choosing the sort by drop-down menu. You can sort it by case name, case ID, the caseload, what program that they're on, and also the status date. I usually use the status date because then I can look at who has applied, who is getting closer to 20 days, who's getting closer to 30 days, who I need to make sure I'm taking action on. So, and it also will show you the benefit month that their case is rolled into and whether or not that month is authorized. Moving on to the EPICS caseload summary by worker. This shows your office and the caseworkers that you have in your office, what the case count is. We know that changes on a regular basis depending on who's approved, who's denied, who's applied, things like that. So this just gives you a quick shot of how many cases each worker has in TANF and SNAP, what office that's in. We also have the monthly new hire report. So on our narratives where it's asking for the state new hire, if you check that, this is the report that we're talking about. You want to make sure it will show you the case ID, the case name, the hire date, and the employee name. It could be a child in that household, a spouse, and then the name and location. Make sure that we are acting on that. This information is known to agency. So if you have a client that is showing up on that, make sure that we are acting on that and requesting information for that employment. And then the monthly potentially TANF report. You know, we have this push to try to get as many individuals as we can on the POWER program so that we can get them some training, get them into the workforce. This is something that we've been talking about for a while. So this report is fantastic and will actually pull up anyone on your caseload who is potentially financially eligible for TANF. It'll show the case name, the household size, what their reported gross earned income is, the unearned income, the earned income disregard that they qualify for. It might be the $600 for a single or $1,200 for a married household. What their countable earned income is after that disregard is, and then what the limit for that household size is. So if you want to pull this up, you know, once a month, and then if you see these people coming in for their interviews, their SNAP research, things like that, then you know you can approach them on, hey, you could potentially be eligible for this other program that will help your family out. And that gives you a way to inform them of that option. So, and I didn't go through every single report. I think that we can all kind of play with Rave and get in there and see how these things work. But I just wanted to touch a few of those that are really helpful for our caseload management to help us to do a better job for our clients. All right. So that is all we have for you today. We're going to get you out of here almost an hour early. If you have any questions or comments about anything, make sure that you are sending those to myself, Jackie or Kelly, Andy or Corinne, and we will get those answered for you. Everybody have a great day. Thank you.